it's very touching, honey. Now rub my feet.
Hey, I wouldn't rub your feet if a genie popped out of them.
If you grew up on sitcoms where every problem was solved with a hug and a gentle life lesson, Married with Children probably felt like it came from another planet. Instead of a perfect dad in a sweater, you got Al Bundy, a defeated shoe salesman whose greatest achievement was 4 touchdowns in a single high school game. The Bundys weren't aspirational. They were loud, broke, petty, and somehow way more honest than most wholesome TV families. But behind all those insults, cheap jokes, and that legendary couch, the show has a surprisingly strange history. From a real-life protest that accidentally turned it into a hit, to forgotten spin-offs, a finale that wasn't meant to be a finale, and even an animated revival that almost happened, the world of Married with Children is full of weird twists and behind-the-scenes drama. In this video, we're diving into some of the strangest, funniest, and most unexpected facts about Married with Children. If you enjoy this deep dive into TV history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future weird facts breakdowns. Now, let's head over to Chicago and check in with the Bundys. 15. Fox's anti-Cosby gambit. When Married with Children premiered in 1987, Fox was the scrappy new kid on the block, desperately trying to stand out from the big 3 networks. Instead of chasing another squeaky clean family sitcom, Fox went the opposite direction. Behind the scenes, the idea was simple. If The Cosby Show was America's polished, picture-perfect ideal, the Bundys would be the brutally honest, beer-stained reality. Al isn't a wise philosopher dad. He's exhausted, broke, and resentful. Peggy doesn't run a spotless home. She's glued to the TV and lives for shopping. The kids aren't model students. They're scheming, shallow, and gloriously selfish. That was the point. Fox used Married with Children as a statement. We're not like the other guys. The network leaned into the shock value, the raunchier jokes, and the unapologetic dysfunction. It was risky, and a lot of critics hated it at first, but it gave Fox something priceless, a clear identity. The Bundys helped define an entire network by proudly being the family you'd never see on Thursday night on NBC. 14. The episode A Protester Accidentally Made Famous. Most shows fear controversy. Married with Children basically turned it into free advertising. In 1989, a Michigan housewife named Terry Rakolta was so offended by a particularly raunchy episode that she launched a public campaign urging advertisers to boycott the show. She sent letters, spoke to the media, and framed the series as everything wrong with television. Fox braced for impact. Some sponsors did back away, but something else happened too. People who had never watched the show suddenly wanted to know what all the fuss was about. Ratings climbed. The protest, meant to kill the show, actually helped cement its reputation as the naughty sitcom you weren't supposed to watch, which of course made it even more appealing. Instead of apologizing and dialing things back, Married with Children leaned further into its identity. It was never going to be polite, and the controversy proved there was a big audience hungry for something different. It's one of those rare TV moments where a moral crusade accidentally created a cult hit. 13. The longest-running Fox sitcom that never won an Emmy. For all its impact, Married with Children was never a critic's darling. While other sitcoms were racking up awards, the Bundys were racking up complaints, think pieces, and massive fan loyalty. The show ran for 11 seasons, became one of Fox's earliest tentpoles, and turned its cast into pop culture icons, but it never took home a primetime Emmy. Part of that is timing. The late 80s and early 90s were packed with more respectable comedies, shows that felt deeper, cleaner, or more prestigious on paper. Married with Children, with its toilet humor, crude one-liners, and open mockery of sentimentality, was easy for awards voters to overlook. But in a way, that underdog status fits perfectly. Al Bundy wouldn't win trophies. He'd show up, get ignored, and mutter about it on the couch. The real prize wasn't statues on a shelf. It was the show's weird endurance. Reruns kept playing for decades. The jokes stayed quotable, and the Bundys outlived a lot of those better respected shows. Very on brand. 12. Ed O'Neill's secret record on the show. Ed O'Neill didn't just play the miserable center of Married with Children. He literally was the show's anchor. He's the only cast member to appear in every single episode. If you saw the Bundys, you saw Al. The writers built the entire world around his frustration, his sarcasm, and that iconic slumped body language. His audition is legendary. Instead of playing Al as a loud, cartoonish hothead, O'Neill walked into the room with this defeated shuffle, like a man carrying every bad decision and sore foot of his life. That one physical choice instantly sold the character. The producers reportedly knew in moments that they'd found their guy. What's wild is how different O'Neill's later success looks. A whole new generation met him as Jay Pritchett on Modern Family, richer, calmer, and more dignified. But if you look closely, you can still see a little Al in there. The eye rolls, the exasperated sighs, the feeling that life was supposed to turn out just a bit better than it did. 11. Peggy Bundy's look was carefully engineered kitsch. Peggy Bundy doesn't just enter a scene, she announces herself. The big red hair, the tight clothes, the leopard print, the loud jewelry. It all looks like wild over-the-top costuming. But Katey Sagal actually helped create that entire look on purpose. Sagal pitched Peg as a kind of exaggerated mashup of 1960s TV moms, retro pinup glamour, and lower middle-class kitsch. She wanted Peg to feel like someone who never updated her style after her glory days, clinging to an idea of sexy that the rest of the world had left behind. That giant wig, the leggings, the off-the-shoulder tops. They tell you who Peg is before she even opens her mouth. The result is one of the most instantly recognizable sitcom characters ever. You can silhouette Peggy Bundy and still know exactly who you're looking at. And underneath that cartoonish exterior, Sagal played her with genuine warmth and frustration, turning what could have been a one-note nag into a weirdly lovable chaos agent in high heels. 10. Christina Applegate almost turned down Kelly. It's hard to imagine anyone but Christina Applegate as Kelly Bundy, but she almost walked away from the role. Early on, she worried that playing a ditzy, hypersexualized teenager might typecast her and make it hard to be taken seriously later. A dumb blonde character can easily turn into a punchline and nothing else. Instead of quitting, Applegate decided to lean in and elevate it. Kelly isn't just stupid. She's cunning when it suits her, ruthlessly honest, and completely aware of her effect on people. Applegate added timing, attitude, and small physical bits that made Kelly feel like more than just a joke. Off-screen, people were sometimes shocked to learn she was sharp, thoughtful, and nothing like her character. That gap actually became part of the weird legacy of the show. Applegate later went on to build a serious career in film and prestige TV, proving that even a role as outrageous as Kelly Bundy can be a launchpad, not a trap. 9. Steve left the show for Broadway, but kept coming back. In a show full of cartoon characters, Steve Rhodes was originally the relatively normal neighbor, smug, yuppie, and convinced he was better than the Bundys. Then, suddenly, he was gone. David Garrison, the actor who played Steve, wasn't fired or pushed out. He actually asked to leave the show so he could return to his first love, live theater and Broadway work. Instead of killing the character off or pretending he never existed, the writers turned Steve's exit into a joke. He left Marcy, ran off to become a park ranger, and slowly morphed into this strange, bitter figure who would occasionally reappear in later seasons. Every return made him a little more unhinged and resentful. His replacement, Jefferson Darcy, brought a totally different energy, more lazy con man than uptight banker. That shift changed the dynamic next door, but Steve's cameos kept the early seasons connected. It's a rare case where an actor's career choice gave the show more long-term storytelling material, not less. 8. The audience was practically a character. If you watch Married with Children with the volume up, you'll notice something unusual. The studio audience wasn't just laughing, they were reacting, loudly, wildly. Characters like Al and Kelly got rock star-style entrances, complete with cheers and whistles that could go on for several seconds. Producers loved the energy, but sometimes had to rein it in. The crowd would get so hyped for certain catchphrases or entrances that it threatened to swallow the dialogue. Still, that live noise did something important. It told viewers at home, this is an event. These people are icons. It's one reason the show feels almost theatrical. Jokes land with that instant feedback. Pauses stretch as actors ride the laughter. You can sense when a line hits harder than expected because the cast has to hold for the reaction. The audience wasn't just background. They were a barometer of how big the Bundys had become and how much people loved this dysfunctional mess of a family. 7. The dog was a star with a dark running joke. The Bundys' dog, Buck, could have been just a prop, a background pet lying on the floor. Instead, the writers gave him a voice, literally. Episodes occasionally featured Buck's inner monologue, delivered in deadpan, world-weary commentary about the madness of living with the Bundys. Those scenes gave the show this odd, slightly surreal flavor. It was like even the dog knew the family was doomed. As Buck aged in real life, the show did something especially weird. They wrote a storyline where Buck dies and is reincarnated as the Bundys' new dog, Lucky. It's a dark joke wrapped in sitcom absurdity. Instead of just quietly swapping animals, they turned it into a running gag about fate, karma, and just how unlucky you'd have to be to end up with this family twice. Only Married with Children would look at the family pet and say, you know what this needs? A reincarnation plot. 6. The spin-offs you probably forgot. When a sitcom hits big, the next step is obvious. Spin-offs. Married with Children tried, but lightning didn't quite strike twice. The most notable attempt was Top of the Heap, built around Matt LeBlanc's character Vinny, who first appeared on Married with Children as a sort of Bundy-adjacent loser with big dreams and not much else. Top of the Heap followed Vinny and his father as they schemed to climb the social ladder. But without the Bundys around, the chaos felt thinner. The show lasted only a handful of episodes. It even got its own spin-off, Vinny and Bobby, which also fizzled out quickly. These short-lived series proved something important. The Bundys weren't just a backdrop. Their chemistry, the way Al, Peg, Kelly, and Bud bounced off each other, was the engine. You can copy the tone and the crudeness, but without that specific family at the center, the whole thing just doesn't quite work. 5. The finale no one knew was the finale. You'd expect a show as long-running and influential as Married with Children to get a big, emotional farewell episode. Instead, it kind of didn't. The cast and crew reportedly didn't know the show was being canceled when they filmed what ended up being the final episode. There was no carefully planned goodbye. No big end-of-an-era send-off. Just another weird Bundy misadventure that happened to air last. Fans only realized later that they'd already seen the final new episode. For a lot of people, it felt oddly abrupt, like the show just vanished mid-sentence. In a strange way, though, that non-ending fits. The Bundys weren't built for sentimental closure. They weren't supposed to ride off into the sunset with everything neatly resolved. You kind of assume Al is still on that couch somewhere, grumbling about his life, another day at the shoe store ahead of him. Cancellation didn't fix anything. It just froze the dysfunction in place, forever. 4. International Bundys took over the world. You might think a show as uniquely American as Married with Children, set in Chicago, obsessed with football, shopping malls, and beer, wouldn't translate well overseas. But the Bundys proved oddly universal. The format was adapted in multiple countries, including a long-running German version, with local actors playing their own versions of Al, Peg, and the kids. The details changed. Different jobs, different sports, different slang, but the core premise stayed the same. A broke, frustrated dad, a checked-out mom, and kids who constantly test their patience. Turns out, dysfunctional families are a pretty global concept. These remakes show just how strong the show's DNA really is. You can swap the language and location, but people everywhere recognize that feeling of being stuck in a job you hate, dreaming of past glories, and dealing with relatives who drive you crazy. The Bundys may be American icons, but their misery traveled surprisingly well. 3. Polk High, Number 33, and the football in-jokes. For Al Bundy, life peaked the night he scored 4 touchdowns in a single game for Polk High. He mentions it so often it becomes both a joke and a tragic character note. Al's entire sense of self-worth is rooted in something he did as a teenager, wearing that number 33 jersey. The show plays this for laughs, but it's also quietly sad. Al clings to that one perfect night because nothing since has come close. You'll spot little details. Old trophies, his reverence for the jersey, the way he lights up whenever he gets to tell the story again. There are subtle football in-jokes sprinkled throughout too, from references to classic plays to the way Al talks about the game, like it's the only pure thing left in his life. Polk High isn't just a school. It's this mythological place where Al was once a hero, and you get the sense he'd trade almost anything to go back there, just for one more drive down the field. 2. The couch was practically a prison. If you had to pick one object to represent Married with Children, it wouldn't be a shoe or a jersey. It'd be that ugly, sagging couch in the Bundy living room. That's where Al collapses after work. That's where the family argues, watches TV, ignores each other, and occasionally has their rare moments of unity. Over the years, the couch took a beating. Cast, crew, and props all cycled in and out, but that piece of furniture stayed put, slowly getting more worn and tired, just like Al. Behind the scenes, it reportedly had to be maintained, repaired, and even replaced as the seasons piled up. Symbolically, it's perfect. The couch is Al's throne and his prison. He wants to escape his life, but he's always back in that exact same spot, hand in his waistband, remote in hand, zoning out to whatever's on TV. For all the wild things that happen on the show, everything always comes back to that living room and that couch. 1. The long-talked-about animated revival. Even after the show ended, the Bundys refused to stay buried. Over the years, there were multiple attempts to bring Married with Children back in some form, a spin-off focused on Bud, reunion specials, and most intriguingly, an animated revival. Animation offered a clever solution to a very real problem: time. The cast had aged, moved on to other roles, and schedules were messy. But in animation, the Bundys could look exactly like they did in the early 90s forever. No recasting. No awkward "we're older now" jokes. Just pure, frozen-in-time chaos. The main cast reportedly showed interest in returning to voice their characters, which says a lot about how much they still love this dysfunctional TV family. While the animated project has floated in and out of development limbo, the fact that people keep trying to resurrect the Bundys proves their staying power. They may be fictional, but they're weirdly hard to kill. Conclusion. Married with Children was never meant to be classy, and that's exactly why it lasted. In a TV world full of neat lessons and idealized homes, the Bundys gave viewers something different. A family that was messy, broke, loud, and strangely relatable. Behind the crude jokes and outrageous gags, the show quietly pushed boundaries, challenging what a sitcom could look like. What kind of characters could lead a show, and how far you could go on network television. From protests that turned into free promotion, to spin-offs that crashed, to near comebacks in animated form, the legacy of Married with Children is as chaotic as the show itself. The Bundys never got the fancy awards or the heartfelt farewell episode, but they got something better: longevity. quotability, and a place in pop culture that still feels secure decades later. If you enjoyed this trip back to the Bundy house, make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know your favorite Married with Children moment in the comments. And stick around. We've got plenty more weird facts from your favorite classic shows coming soon.